I started to feel under pressure to move from where I was. Um, Lots of like guilt tripping. It's like if you love me, you'll do this and that, and it's always me having to give up my job, move away from my family. I've got a large extended family. I wasn't really bothered about buying a house. There was a lot of pressure for me to save, save, save. Felt like I loved her, and I felt like this was really important to her. So I did it eventually. So we moved in together. We bought our own, bought a flat together. I did a lot of work in the flat and doing it up because it was in a pretty bad state. She got pregnant at a time that we weren't really in a good place, and I'm not sure exactly how my son was conceived, but there certainly was a time around that time where I was asleep and I woke up and she was on top of me. And yeah, so that was obviously without consent because I was not awake at that time. Um, so that was kind of shocking, to be honest. My choice about having the intimacy was taken away from me. It's very, very difficult for some people to understand because I guess it could be almost like a fantasy for some men to wake up this way. But when you're in a really complex relationship and within that relationship you're not happy, it isn't a fantasy. It's more of like a nightmare, really. We stayed together for a bit longer. I stayed through the birth, and after my son was born, it got worse. She was really very, very emotionally abusive to me. She emasculated me quite often. She'd blame me for everything. Like when our son was getting sick, it was my fault for everything. So I felt really, really terrible. She just seemed angry at me all the time. Nothing I did ever seemed to be good enough, even though I was working full time. I would get up in the middle of the night. I'd do feeds in the middle of the night. He was bottle fed, so I was able to feed him. I'd bath him. I did as much as I possibly could. And I'm not saying that that's like something I shouldn't have done, but I just felt like I was doing as much as I possibly could, but still being told it wasn't good enough. One of the rules, I was never allowed to say anything about the relationship to friends or family. And she like broke up with me in front of my parents, and I was like, I can't let my son grow up seeing this kind of behavior. She had thrown stuff at me, had been into my Facebook, deleted loads of friends off my Facebook. She'd hacked into my phone. At one point, when we were having dinner, she stabbed my hand with a knife, like a steak knife. I would show that I was upset with it, and it was painful enough for it to like upset me, and she would like belittle me or laugh at me. I did feel very, very sorry for her, and I did make excuses for her for a lot of the time. A lot of her behaviors, I excused, and I didn't say really anything to any of my family members while it was going on. So tied down in this relationship, I felt like it had to work. I was going to the flat but living away, and then tried to carry on the same kind of routine where I would see him after work. I'd still bathe him. Slowly, I was getting ejected from the house. Um, but it was causing me a 3 hour drive to work and 3 hours back, which was significantly damaging my mental health further. I got a letter from a solicitor saying I needed to give the keys and all this kind of stuff to them. They were basically accusing me of abandoning the family home. I'd been warned that if I went home, the police would be called. It was around about that time when I was like, how do I see my son? So social services became involved, and initially they they said to my ex-partner, why are you not letting him see the child? And she didn't have a good enough reason, so the social worker managed to broker some contact. But it was like on weekends for a couple of hours in the local community, and this is around about when the pandemic was kicking off. So I was like, where can I take him? I'm living too far away to take him back in that short period of time. And you want me to come have him for an hour, drive back, and then do the same thing the next day? That's not enough. I want to see my son more than this. And then she basically told me to take her to court if I wasn't happy with it. So that's what I did. I took her to court. And that's when things got significantly worse for me. I didn't realize at the time how terrible family courts would be. I'd been warned that so many things would happen, such as false accusations, and they did happen. I obviously had my own allegations, so we had counter allegations, and everything just seemed to get flipped on its head. And suddenly, in the family court, my allegations, even though they came first, were started to be considered counter allegations or premeditated allegations. But yeah, she'd accused me of rape as well. After she'd given birth to our child, which I hadn't had sex with her since well before before he was born. I wasn't granted access to my son because the social workers didn't do their homework and I didn't have clearance from safeguarding. And all they did was apologize. And then by the time the next hearing came, this rape allegation surfaced. She'd forced me to penetrate her while I was sleeping, um, probably 8 months prior to that allegation. And that I'd written up in my police report. In the UK, the rape laws do not cover females abusing males. Obviously, I know now it was illegal, but under a different law. So that was also used against me that I had not accused her of rape. But yeah, that came in. That was really difficult one to handle. I was really tough on my mental health. At this time, I was still driving like 2-3 hours to work, depending on the traffic, and I did have some suicidal thoughts at that time. At the time of when things were ending with my ex-partner, it was the worst time at work as well. So I had no safe place to go. At this time, it was terrible because I felt home wasn't safe and work wasn't safe. And I used to do things like, you know, my safe space would be my car. So I used to eat chocolate on the way home. That was one of my things to try to keep myself sane. I did have some counseling, um, and I used those techniques as well to support myself. So I made sure I was um, making sure I was connecting with friends on a social level. This was like during the pandemic, so there's lots of video calls and stuff. I was trying to be very creative, using the arts to try to help with my mental health. Trying to get outside when I could. And at that time, I was journaling. I was writing a journal. I'm not very good at writing journals, but that really helped at the time. And yeah, and then basically, family court was absolutely dreadful. Went on for 3 years, and then suddenly I was able to have contact, and it wasn't a problem. So now I see my son quite regularly, and we've actually got quite a cordial relationship. But the family court aspect of it was absolutely horrendous. I think all of my family were angry, really, and sad, very sad. I mean, they saw what I was going through, and I mean, they did what they could do. And if they didn't do that, then I don't think I'd be here today. But I think they all felt like that they were helpless. It's a hold they have on you. That's something that's very difficult to explain to somebody that's never been in that situation. They'll be like, "Why didn't you just leave?" I mean, my main goal going forwards now is to support parents that are separated to reduce their conflict so they don't need to go through what I went through. I just feel like the courts increase the conflict 100-fold. I doubt that allegation would ever have been made. It wouldn't have been made. I know for sure it would never have been made if I didn't apply to court. In modern times, almost anything is domestic violence. If you shout at your partner in an argument, that's domestic violence. And it's not just domestic violence, it's child abuse. Because if a child is in the house, when you've had an argument with your ex-partner, you're suddenly a child abuser. From that one incident, maybe because you caught them cheating or could be anything that caused it. And they will then stop you from seeing your child for 3 years. A lot of the family court stuff has certainly happened to a lot of men that they don't really talk about it. But if you are willing to speak about it, they will open up. So there's lots of the guys that I played football with were like, oh yeah, I've been through this. This happened with me. The false allegations and going through not being able to see their kids for so long. That's very common.